Hey everybody, I want to welcome you back. This is Jason with the Landlord Launch. Today we are going to be going over resident retention, all things resident retention, how it affects pretty much every component of the property management cycle, all things retention. Let's jump right in here. I think this is going to be a good session, a good section for you, hopefully very illuminating. We are, again, going to really take a deep dive and start looking at how retention is built into our processes, all with the goal of keeping our tenant in place if we choose to do so. If that's an option we want to have that available to us. If we don't, that's fine. We can still say goodbye, but if we do want them there, we want to make sure that we have every opportunity to keep them. We want them to be happy with us if that's what we want. We just want that option if that's something we want to choose. Because I'm going to show you why it is cheaper to hold a tenant than it is to turn them over. Turnover are expensive, and in all situations, outside of tenant not paying rent, causing damage, things along those lines, keeping a normal, healthy relationship type tenant in place is always more cost effective than a turnover. What else? We're going to talk about that renewal process, what that kind of looks like, at least a standard one. You can, again, any of this stuff, you can adjust and twist and turn to what works for you. And then renewal incentives, just some different ideas there, how I've used them in the past, how I've seen them using it, and maybe some ways that you could use them to improve your business as well. Okay, resident retention. So resident retention, I've kind of sprinkled this in some of the other sections in the course as part of this course, and really resident retention starts with that very first interaction that we have with the tenant. It's about building that relationship over the course of from the moment we pick up that phone and talk to them to schedule that appointment. Actually, it even kind of goes in before that in the way that we advertise, the way we take our pictures, the way that we present ourselves, the way we present our property. All that starts to build the relationship, because what that's doing is it is basically giving the tenant an impression of how we hold ourselves, how professional we are, how we react to things, how we deal with life in general, and how we are going to treat them, how we're going to respect them or not respect them, and in the course of the lease or relationship. Again, like I said before, losing a tenant is far more expensive than retaining. And in my opinion, the longer you can keep a tenant in place just means more profits. The less you're going to have turnover expenses. A good tenant's when I say good tenants, I am also qualifying that with the idea that they're paying rent on time and they're taking care of your property. If they are not doing those things, that's not a tenant that we want to retain. That's a whole different issue. If they are a good tenant, if there's someone we want to retain, even if sometimes we don't always see eye to eye, by keeping that professionalism, by treating them with respect, by treating them like adults, we can get past those issues. I mean, adults are not always going to agree on things, but if we treat each other with respect, there's a fair chance, if they're a good tenant, regardless of those disagreements, that we're going to want to keep those people in place. And a good retention program built into our processes gives us the best possible opportunity and chance of doing that. So let's take a look at turnover expenses. And these are some of the more common ones, and I'm sure that, if we get a group of landlords together, we can probably come up with 20, 30 more. But let's just look at it, vacancy loss. If you got $1,500 a month rent, let's look at this monthly. I think I have kind of this laid out. Vacancy loss, 1 month's rent, $1,500 you're not putting in your pocket. So let's say that you have to cover the mortgage payment, interest, taxes, insurance. Let's just say that's $975. So that's maybe coming out of your pocket. Utilities could be $100 pretty easily. I mean, if electricity, water, depending, especially if you're in there doing the work yourself, or contractors in there running your AC while they're doing the work. HOA dues, those aren't going to stop. Lawn care, that's not going to stop. Marketing, if you're paying for marketing, that's an added expense on there. Turnover maintenance, even if it's a light turnover, getting somebody over there or your own time, switching out some outlets, changing out some plumbing parts, patching some holes, whatever that may be. Paint, even a good tenant, paint doesn't last, 2 to 5 years, normal wear and tear on paint. And paint actually, $550 is actually probably pretty cheap. That's probably a pretty small place these days. It's getting pretty expensive as of the recording of this program, this video right now. I mean, paint's getting pretty expensive right now. Things are going up everywhere. Cleaning, still pretty reasonable, around $150, but I have seen in apartments these days, I've seen them push $250 as well. Carpet cleaning, $85. Depends how big the place is, how many rooms, what kind of specials you got going on, what kind of relationship, how much volume you give the person, what kind of company you're dealing with. It could get a lot more expensive is what I'm saying. Flooring replacement, $1,500. Maybe that's a room of carpet depending on the quality of the carpet. I mean, that stuff can get really expensive. I mean, as of right now, I know that at least in the apartment industry, a lot of places just getting away from carpet and going to like vinyl plank flooring just because the duration of it seems to last a little longer. And with the vinyl plank flooring, you can at least replace section of it to where carpet, you destroy a room, you have to redo the whole thing. Another thing that landlords really don't calculate is the value of their own time and the management of this, any time they spent, because again, I recommended, suggested in the maintenance management section that maybe you even treat yourself like a handyman and bill for your own time and create invoices and do that type of thing, and get paid for the time you put into it. But a lot of landlords don't do that. They think they're saving money, but there is a trade-off of your time for money. And one of the things I always say, that if you're a do-it-yourself landlord and it's going to take you 3 weeks, 4 weeks over the weekends to get this place put back together, and you think you're saving money, you haven't taken into consideration how much vacancy loss. I mean, if you can get somebody over there to knock this out in a day or two and pay $500, or you're going to wait a month while you piece this thing together and lose $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month in vacancy loss, you're not looking at this the right way. So, most people don't calculate the value of their own time when they look at the turnover expenses, but it does add up. It really does. So if you don't have to deal with any of this, tenant stays in place, you are far better off. So let's take a look at the property management cycle. Let's just kind of see how retention kind of plays in, where it affects the property management cycle, some different ways we can kind of look at this. So think about it in the marketing. Let's take a look at this picture here. Let's say that, let's just get extreme here. Let's just say this is a picture that's on your marketing saying, hey, look, we're cleaning this up, but this is what this room looks like. You think anybody's going to come look at that? And if they do look at that, do you think they're going to have your respect? Do you think that you're going to have a good tenant? No, that's not going to be the case. But not so much in marketing. Think about if you showed a home that somebody just moved out and this is what it looks like. What kind of tenant do you think that's going to be acceptable for? Or what do you think they're going to think about you? How do you think they're going to be able to treat you? If you are showing them a home like this, what kind of level of respect are you demanding from them? If this is the type of respect you have from them, that you're going to put them in this situation to where they have to look around all this dirt and filth and trash, you don't even respect their time enough to show them a ready unit, you're not going to get that back. So, the point being is the information that you put out there and provide about your properties, the way that the photos you take, the way that you present the property, the way that you show the place, the time that you invest in making sure this is the best quality for this person, to impress them, to respect their time. If they come over to your property and they see this, you are wasting their time. And what kind of landlord are you going to be to them? Why would they want to rent from you if you have no qualms wasting their time like this? That's kind of what I mean on the retention. You do that, you're already blowing the retention game. And to be quite honest with you, if somebody would actually put up with that and they say, oh, we can see past this, they have other stuff going on. They have to accept this. And that's not really the type of tenant you want. But you're going to get the type of tenant that you deserve if you do stuff like this, for sure. So just kind of keep that in mind. That's all part of that respect and that retention type of deal. In the leasing, the way you answer your phone, how quick do you return your call? I mean, if they call and they leave a message and then 6 days later you call back, yeah, you called about this place, if you want to see it, we can go see it. Well, first off, 10 to 1, if they're looking for a place, they probably already found a place if you're waiting 6 days to call them back. But again, you're not really showing them any urgency, any respect, that you're respecting their time or whatever else. And maybe this was something they really wanted to see. And maybe if you would have called them back within an hour or even the same day, hell, they could be the best tenants you ever had in your life. But now they're like, I don't know if I want this type of landlord. What are they going to be like if I have a maintenance request or there's an emergency, or if something happens, how are they going to respond? Am I going to be able to get a hold of them? It's going to be 6 days. Again, all part of the retention. First off, is part of the leasing, in that they're probably not going to lease from you anyway. But if they do end up leasing from you or whatever else, those are going to be questions in their mind, and that's going to be the impression that they have of you as a landlord, which is going to be the respect that you get, because that is the respect that you're asking for. It's I'm not responsive. I really don't care all that much. And so why should they care? You know what I mean? So again, the way you communicate, the way that your appearance, the way your professionalism, the way that you show up for that leasing appointment. Do you have paint all over? You're in a nice pair of pants and a nice polo, or whatever. The way that you look. Are you dressing in such a way that says, hey, I'm a serious person. I'm a landlord. I'm here to show you my property. I care about my property. I put a lot into my property. I want you to take care of my property. You show up in ripped up jeans or pajamas, whatever the case, you're not going to get what you're looking for there. And the people that settle for that are not going to be the tenants, like I said, you want anyway. But you're definitely, if they do decide to move in, you're not setting a great precedent. Okay, retention in your screening. So how well is your process developed? Again, it's about communicating that you have your stuff together, the professionalism. How are you telling them about your screening criteria? Are you setting them up to question how truthful you are? So if you like, oh yeah, we can work through anything or whatever, and then you're like, well, I'm going to have to charge you an additional deposit now because this or that, and your communication is off. If you're using a screening criteria and say, hey, these are my standards, and this is what you need to do to pass this type of deal, they either pass or they don't pass. But if you're like waffling and then you say, well, you're not going to do this, but well, if you give me more money, I'll let you in. It just sets up this precedent. It's like, can I trust this person? Is this somebody that I want as a landlord? Because again, what we're looking at here is that you want good tenants. Well, good tenants want good landlords. And part of being a good landlord is, again, professionalism, clear communication, following through, rapid response, those types of things. So all that stuff leads up to, because if you're setting this precedent here, it's likely that you as a landlord are going to act this way throughout the course of the lease. And therefore, when it comes to retention and keeping them in place, there's a good chance that maybe they don't want to deal with this anymore. If this is what you project and they give you a chance, and this stuff's going to stick with them, and every time you do something that kind of reinforces these original impressions, it's going to make it that much harder for you to retain that tenant. And that's making the assumption these people even move in the first place. But if they do, that's going to set the precedents that will be reinforced time and time again, fairly or unfairly, throughout the course of the lease. And that's why I'm kind of tying these things together here, because again, first impressions are a big deal, and all of this component stuff, the leasing, the marketing, the screening, that's all about first impressions that you're giving off. So the way you treat them, in terms of if you have questions, you need more clarification, do you start interrogating them, or are you just asking questions in a respectful manner and getting that information? Back to the professionalism. In the move-in process. So, okay, is your paperwork organized? Is the home in rent-ready condition when they get there? did you rush them through and then make them feel like it was a bait and switch type deal that you promised these things you didn't deliver on? Did you give them a move-in gift? I mean, that alone, that right there does a lot for a lot of people, that just showing that you cared enough to take a little extra time and get them some things they can actually use. Again, doesn't have to be much. I mean, this picture here is a moving survival kit. Throw a couple bottled waters in there, some snacks and everything else. Hey, here's your moving survival kit on us. Here's a gift card to the pizza joint down the street for after you get done moving, whatever it may be. But that's the type of stuff that people remember, and leaves positive impressions. Again, we're building that retention. We're building a positive impression. We're building that relationship with that tenant. Oh, that was a great thing. That was a very nice thing for them to do for us. How thoughtful. Things along those lines. Those are the things that people remember throughout the course of the lease. When it comes time to renew, it assists. It does help. Okay, so, some of those ongoing tenant relationship things, again, did you remember their birthday? Did you send them a card? Send them an email? Did you give them a little gift? Did you give them a gift for Thanksgiving or Christmas? Christmas card. It doesn't have to be big. You don't have to go buy, a $500 6-course dinner for 7. I mean, I know some landlords that'll drop a turkey off for Thanksgiving. You don't even have to do that. But maybe it's, I don't know, a bottle of wine, or maybe it's just a little Christmas candy basket. I mean, who knows what it is? It's just, again, more about the thought that we're talking about here. When things were maybe not going so good, when you weren't seeing eye to eye, when there's a dispute about something, how did you treat them? Did you berate them? Did you talk down to them? Did you bait them into an argument? Or did you stay professional even when they weren't so professional? It's going to be things like that, because again, those things happen. People don't always see eye to eye. I think we talked about this before, but this very well may be a person that you want to remain in your home, and based on that experience, perhaps that is the one. The thing is that building the positive relationship takes time, and it doesn't take much to destroy that either, because people have a tendency to remember kind of the bad things, especially as you get closer to it. So what we're doing here is we're building this relationship, we're building the foundation and everything else, and then because things don't always go smooth, and then when they don't go smooth, one, you'll get the benefit of the doubt, less likely to file fair housing complaints, more likely to stay at less likely to look for somewhere else to move, especially if your rent increases are reasonable. You're building that foundation, and when things are going wrong, if you stay professional, that's just going to add to that. Even if they weren't happy about the outcome, at least you're not going to make them feel like they're invalidated or they were a fool or whatever else. And even if they don't agree with the outcome, at the very least you treat them with respect, and that will pay off for you. Your communication, I mean, 9 times out of 10, tenants, a lot of times they just want to feel heard, even if you don't have a great solution or whatever else. Just listening to them, making them feel heard about what's going on, and then doing what you can to resolve the situation for them, even if it's not the perfect resolution. That's huge. For one multifamily company I work for, they have a whole department that is that's it. It's just a line for tenants to call. And I, as I've had conversations with that customer service manager, they don't really solve much of anything. Most of the stuff, if there's something to be solved, gets deferred back to the property. But it is a place where the tenant can vent off, to where they're very patient with them, to where they listen to them, where they understand what they're talking about, and they try to help where they can. But most of the stuff they don't actually end up resolving, but it goes a very long ways in terms of retention and calming that situation back down, just because it's a place for them to be heard more than anything. So communication is huge. A place to be heard, communicating about maintenance issues that are happening, where they're at with things, what the progress is, what the status is, communication on rents, even if rent is late, having that communication with them in a professional manner and saying, listen, you know what our policy is. Unfortunately, this is what I have to do. What can you do? Are you going to follow through with that? And being respectful in that situation and staying in open communication and keeping those lines open is huge. Makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so here we are at the lease renewal. So all these things are kind of built up. You know, you've built up this relationship. You've filled up this tank of goodwill. Let's start talking about that renewal. Do they just get a letter? Hey, we're going to raise the rent $200. That's their communication. Well, that's not going to, they get that. That's not going to start them off very well. We'll talk about the renewal process as well, and why I think, that verbal communication. But there's definitely a place for balance for the reminders and stuff. But, it all starts with talking, with communication, with that conversation. Do you make them feel appreciated as a tenant as you go along? Do you want them to stay? Do you offer them incentives to stay? Is the increase reasonable? Can you justify the increase? Are you doubling the rent just because you can? Or are there real needs for increases? Because especially right now where the cost of everything's going up, there's real needs for increases. And what are you telling the tenant about that? Are you just coming in and saying, yeah, we're going to pop it up $400. Sorry. Sucks. Can't go anywhere else anyway. Which very well may be true. I mean, we've had a lot of people, I've seen over the last couple of years, a lot of people turn notices in and within a week or two say, hey, listen, I just can't move. There's everywhere else is far more expensive. So then they stay. But that's not a great way to leave your tenant feeling, well, sorry, this is how much we care about you. Go out and see what's out there, and we'll see you back in a couple of weeks. Yeah, it may be true, but when the time comes, for that next renewal, maybe you want them to stick around. Maybe you're having occupancy problems then. Who knows? It's just not a great way to do it. Let's see here. Renewal specials, we'll talk about those as well. Okay, so the renewal process, like everything else, I'm going to lay out just kind of a basic lease renewal process here. Maybe it becomes more complicated for you. Maybe it becomes more intricate, more sophisticated is a better word. But basically, this is the lease renewal process. There is going to be a certain period of time before the expiration of the lease where you are going to notify them of, hey, it's time to renew the lease. These are going to be the new terms, or the terms are going to stay the same, or we're not going to renew you, whatever the case may be. There's going to be that lease renewal notification. If they don't sign immediately, then we're going to get to a point to where we're going to want to send them a reminder, maybe a final reminder. Somewhere along there's going to be a decision that theoretically is made, and if they decide to stay, then we're going to do new lease paperwork or some sort of renewal paperwork, and if not, we're going to move into the turnover process. So that's the basic lease renewal process there. Let's kind of just touch on those here for a moment. Okay, so I like to start this process, personally, I like to be about the 90-day mark, maybe a little even further out, but I want to give myself plenty of time to have conversations and see about renewing this lease agreement, and I don't want anybody to feel rushed, especially me on this side of things. I want to give myself plenty of time to pre-lease maybe if I ever have to, but I like to know what the market is doing. So I'm going to complete a market survey, even if it's just a quick one, to see if there's any major shifts in the market I need to know about, either up or down, because that changes my conversation. If market rents have softened, and my house is now going for $200 less a year on average, the comps are, than it was a year ago, I'm going to, when I go to with my lease renewal, I'm going to be like, you know what, you've been such a great resident. I really appreciate everything. I would like to offer you a lease renewal. I'm not going to raise your rents or whatever else. It's just my way of saying thank you for being a great resident. That tenant very likely doesn't know that, that if I were to release this, it's possible I'd lose $200 a month of rent. And it's not a big deal that they don't know. It's just I'm watching the market and I'm making a decision. Doesn't mean I appreciate them any less, but I'm going to spin that and I'm going to use that information in such a way that I can secure that lease and make them feel appreciated to secure that renewal, as opposed to letting it go vacant, having to re-rent it, and maybe losing rent. So I'm going to do my market survey. I'm going to determine whether or not I'm going to ask for a rent increase. I'm going to determine whether or not I want to offer them options. So let's say that this lease is going up. Let's just say that it expires in December. I don't like that at all. I want that lease expiring in a busy leasing month. So I'm going to try to adjust that term. And who knows why it's there. I would have probably tried to avoid that at any cost anyway. But I'm going to try to adjust that term to where it expires like maybe in April or May or maybe June or July, somewhere in a busier season. Usually for me, it's based around the school season. And then if I really want to keep them in place, then maybe I don't raise the rents for that 6 months or that 4 months or that 3 months or whatever. And I'm even honest with them. Hey, listen, I'd love to have you around. I want to keep you around. I want to leave the rent in place. For now, I want to do like a 3-month lease, or if you want, we can do a 15 or 16-month lease if you want to stay in place, but I want this lease expiring. So if I ever am unfortunate enough to lose you as a tenant, it's going to be easier for me to rent at this period of time. Most people understand and respect that as business. I'm also going to determine whether or not I want to give them month-to-month options, or back to the terms. Do I want to offer 6 months? Do I want to offer a year? What are my terms I'm going to offer? Usually, personally, unless I am messing with like the timing of the lease expiration, I like to keep it at a year for myself. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. It's a personal preference, in my opinion. Pros and cons both ways. Determine if you're going to let them go month-to-month. If they say, no, we're not looking, okay, fine. Are you going to ask them to leave, or are you going to let them ride month to month and charge them a month to month fee? And then also determine if you're going to offer a renewal incentive, and what type of incentive, when you're going to offer the incentive, and we'll talk about incentives in a little bit. But if you're like, okay, I really want to keep them in, I got to raise rents a little bit, but I don't want to make it so painful. So what I'm going to do is say, hey, I got to raise rents because I got these expenses coming up, but I really appreciate you. I really want you to stick around. I want to offer you a renewal incentive if you get this thing signed by such and such date. Here are your options, or here's what I'd like to do for you. What do you think? You think we can get this lease signed? Can I send this over to you for your signature? Something along those lines. So, okay. Renewal incentive ideas. So the point of a lease renewal incentive, and maybe we may get into it, but I'll probably just talk as we go here. And if it's on another slide, then, we'll just breeze through it. But the point is to offer an incentive to get them to sign a lease, creates urgency, and keeps them in your home, but at the same time doesn't cost you so much that it would exceed the amount of what vacancy would anyway. So for example, you don't want to give a $3,000 rent concession if you can get your home leased in 30 days anyway. That doesn't make any sense. You want to do what's financially best for you and your investment. So here's some renewal incentive ideas that some people respond to very well. Some of this is going to be situational, depending on your area, depending on the type of tenant that maybe you have. You may know your tenant well enough to know they're a fitness buff, and a gym membership would be very attractive to them. Who knows? But so we'll just look at these. So gym membership, for the most part, my gym membership right now is $100 sign-on fee and $9 a month. Pretty cheap. But would that be valuable for someone? A gift card to somewhere, a carpet cleaning, offering to send somebody in to clean their carpets for them. Even if it doesn't mean that they have to move all the furniture. When we do this, they just come in and clean the exposed areas, the hallways and the bedrooms, and it's a cheap. It's good for your carpet, keeps your house maintained, and they like it too because they're getting clean carpet. Painting an accent wall, or painting a room, making it look better, freshening up the paint. Rent concessions, giving away money, giving away rents, giving away rent credits. Sending a house cleaner in to do a deep clean for them. Again, taking care of the home and really kind of getting in there and knocking out some of that built up stuff. Any type of television, electronics, things along those lines. Small appliances. Hey, if you have pets there, they love their pets, give them a gift card from Petco. Go to Petsy.com. I think I have listed on here, and it has like these specialized gifts for pets. Heck, maybe if you know their pet's birthday or whatever, send that as one of your your relationship building tactics there. Home packages, Alexas, Google Home, prepaid streaming. Netflix gift cards. You can buy a year's membership worth of a Netflix gift card for them if you know that would be something that's interested to them. Subscription boxes, spa gift cards, anything you can think of that would be attractive to them that is cheaper than what vacancy would cost you, to get them to help incentivize them to sign the lease. And it doesn't even mean that just because you're in some ways that you can be looked at, you're just trying to bribe. Yeah, you're trying to get them to sign a lease. And it doesn't mean you care any less about having them there, but you want to give them, this is just another way of saying, hey, you're important to me for whatever reason, even if it's simply just make sure your place stays. There's nothing wrong with that. Your whole job is to keep that place occupied. So do what you need to do. Again, as long as it doesn't cost you more money than what it would just to let it go vacant and release it. So I like at that 90-day mark that when I figure out what I'm going to do, what I'm going to increase rents, what kind of incentives, what my approach is going to be, what my backup plan is going to be, because I have a plan here. It's like, okay, I'm going to offer this first, and if they're waffling here, then I'm going to shift here, and I have a couple steps I like to, if they do this, I want to do this. If they do this, I want to do this. Once I have that worked out, I'm not just going to send them a notice. I'm going to call them. By now I should have developed that relationship to the point where I can call them and say, hey, listen, I want to talk to you about your lease renewal. We're coming up on that, and I'd really like to see where you're standing on that and start having a conversation. Are you thinking about sticking around? Yeah, we'd like to, or no, I don't know. We're looking at maybe moving. Okay, so what are some of the reasons why you're looking at moving? What are your challenges you're going into? Maybe I can help you with that. But I'm having a conversation with them, because that's going to be a lot more successful than just send them a notification. Once I have that conversation with them, and maybe even give a soft offer out there, but hey, this is kind of what I was thinking, that because your incentive may change based on what they're thinking. Like, yeah, the rents I'm seeing out there are a little cheaper. We're thinking about moving. I understand. I see that softening too. I really kind of need to keep my rent similar to where I'm at. But here's what I would say is, first off, when you're looking at this stuff, look at the cost of moving. Look at your moving truck. Look at the utility transfers. Look at your time into it. Look at the maybe movers, whatever those are, and look at all the expenses that come along with that, that you wouldn't have to if you stayed. And what I'm willing to do, especially because since you've been a great resident, I've really enjoyed the relationship we've built. I'd love to have you around another year. Is I'm willing enough. I was going to offer you $1,200 incentive to stay, but if you want, I can actually just knock $100 off your rent a month to reduce your monthly effective rent to this much. Is that something to be attractive to you? And if so, can we get this lease secured? If you were gonna entertain that, but hey, I'd really like you to stay. I do need to keep, but I do have a budget for some incentives. I noticed that, you're really fit. How, I have, maybe you use some options. What I was going to say is I was going to offer you a choice between gym membership over here at this gym. I was going to offer you a free year of a streaming package, or I was going to, offer you, a 72-inch flat screen TV, Sony, whatever that I saw. I figured that you liked all three of those. If I get this lease secured as an incentive and appreciation of being a good resident, I would give you your choice. You pick one, it's yours. I'll make it happen. Yeah, that's great. I would love a gym membership. Mine was about to expire. Well, I tell you what, let me send this over to you and talk it over with your wife or whatever else. If you guys are good, let's go on and secure this now. I know this doesn't expire for another 2 months, but let's secure this now. Let me get your gym membership over to you now, and and I'll get that set up for you, whatever the case may be. But the point being is, if you have your plan and you talk to them about where they're at and they give you objections, then you can use and shift those incentives in such a way to overcome the objections and get them to stay and retain. And then you've knocked it out and you don't have to worry about them leaving. You got another tenant for another good year. It only cost you $100 and $9.99 a month or whatever that may be. You're good to go, they're good to go, and you can move on with life and keep on making money. Having said that, if they do not make a decision at that point in time, they're like, yeah, I want to renew, then you can say, hey, listen, based on our conversation today, I'm going to send over kind of official lease renewal, just notification in writing for you. It's based on what we're talking about. It's just something that, I want to get in writing over to you for you to consider here. I'm going to follow up with you in a couple days though. Is that all right? Or I'm going to follow up with you in 2 weeks. Is that okay? And then go on and send that over in writing as well. That's what this first lease renewal notification are. Now I have samples of these, And if you want to just send lease renewals notifications without conversations, of course, you can do that too. If you find that works for you, great. It works for you. You do what works for you in your business. I have in the Forms Vault all kinds of different versions of lease renewal notifications, reminders, all kinds of stuff. We're going to look at a couple versions here today just as samples, but again, these are pretty standard things. There's some different ways you can do them, different ways you can word them. Go in, find one that works for you, and then use it. Nothing wrong with that at all. So let's take a look at the next step here. So let's say you haven't heard anything. Let's say you talked to them, you haven't heard back, you try to call them, nothing happens, and you've sent that first one out. The next kind of step here, again, is to kind of try to make that follow-up call first. But if they don't answer and you really don't know what's going on, you haven't got an answer, and maybe you haven't even put a lease renewal incentive. Maybe you save your lease renewal incentive and you send them another reminder, leave them a message, send them, hey, listen, I wanted to follow up with this. Hey, I think I got some ideas that may make it worth your time to stay. Why don't you give me a call? I'd like to bounce them off of you. In the meantime, I'm going to send you over just kind of a follow-up reminder as well on here, because I really kind of need to figure out which way you guys want to go, those types of things. But again, the point is to try to generate that call. So if you didn't offer an incentive in the first place, maybe you save it for that second call as a way to create that urgency to, maybe get them interested in sticking around after all. And then just send that out. And again, I got a couple different versions of that lease renewal reminder. So we're getting down to it. If we haven't heard from this person back and we really need to know what's going on, we have a decision to make. Do we want to let this kind of roll over to a month-to-month? Or are we going to go on and ask them to leave so that we can find somebody that's going to stick around? Again, I'm going to call them. I'm going to see where they're at in their decision-making process. I'm still going to try to sell them into staying and, use the incentive if I can. Maybe I'm sending them an email, or whatever else. But they don't answer, then I'm going to have to get some sort of official decision. If it's going to be me saying, okay, I'm going to move on because I need to really prepare for this, I'm going to go on and send them a 30-day notice. Say, hey, listen, I'd love to have you stay. If something changes, great. But in the meantime, it's your 30-day notice because I need to give you notice so that I can start getting this ready. I'm going to schedule a time with you so I can start pre-leasing this home, those things. Or it's going to be, hey, listen, I understand maybe you're not ready for a decision yet. I'm okay with you sticking on a month-to-month lease. As we go forward, I'll let you do this for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long you want to. But I'm going to charge you a month-to-month fee while we do that. It's going to be $50 extra a month, $100 extra a month, $200 extra a month, whatever it'll be. That's going to start this date. If I don't hear back, we don't have a lease renewal in place by then, which I would love to do. But if we don't have that, then as of this date, I'm going to start charging this because some people are just not responsive. So at the very least, then you can charge them this lease renewal when that time comes. And again, I have all kinds of sample letters in the Forms Vault for you to look at and dive into and use for those purposes. Again, get them on the phone if you can. That is always the ideal method of communication. And here we go. Here's your notice of non-renewal. So by that 30-day mark or whatever's in your lease, if in your lease you have a 60-day notice requirement for the tenant, you have a 60-day notice requirement from you to them, unless you vary that. But this is what it is: notice of non-renewal here, and this may be just somebody. If you want them to move on, that's fine too. You can issue this as well. If you don't want to renew them, this is what you'd use: notice of non-renewal. But again, we regret to inform you that we will not be renewing your lease agreement at this time. Consider this letter your written notice to vacate the premises at the conclusion of your lease agreement. It outlines a few things, and I would move into the move out process from that point as well. And again, like we talked about, if it's more the month-to-month deal, send them the notice of send them a notice with the new month-to-month rental rate so that they know what they're going to be charging if they don't secure the lease. As of that point in time. But if you don't want them to stick around, if you don't want them to do a month-to-month, if that's not okay with you, just give them the notice of non-renewal and try to get them out of there. Try to pre-lease it, do all those types of things. And then that one's definitely in writing. You may even want to post or email or certify, maybe. Kind of depends on the relationship with the tenant. If they're not responding to you or whatever, and you want to make sure they got it so that you can move on with other legal advancements if you have to. You may want to, if you think that they're not going to get out, that they're going to try to hold on, be a holdover, you may want to certify this or do, get prepped for a potential legal battle. Hopefully you're not dealing with that, but at some point you probably will. Okay, so on the renewal paperwork, in the past I have seen like those one-page lease renewals of no terms, changes, and rents and all that good stuff. But personally, I like just to have a new lease agreement, maybe some new addendums, if anything's changed. Again, I've used the renewal agreements if nothing has changed whatsoever, but I just feel more secure with the more secure documentation that's updated. Plus, a lot of times my lease will change a little bit here and there and get updated throughout the course of the year. So this way, just by doing this as a process, I always know. I never have to question, are they on my new lease, or are they just, I don't have to worry about that. Any terms that I change, I know they're on the latest one if I just renew their lease every year that way. Also, if we're going to renew, again, you're going to be in there maybe with the quarterly, but get in there whether it's a quarterly inspection or whatever else. Make sure that you are in there looking at that, making sure that renewal is something you want to do, that any repairs are taken care of, that you take care of that before that renewal is in place as well. But if you're doing your quarterly inspections, you probably already have a great kind of feel for that anyway. Okay, and that's it. It's not an overly complicated process in terms of the actual lease renewal and that type of stuff. The challenge and the trick is building in all the retention stuff throughout the other components of the relationship and your processes and everything else, so that when it comes to renewal, and if you want a renewal, it makes it that much easier for you to do. So in this section here, just as a quick recap, we did talk about that resident retention, how it does affect all, how it does kind of weave its way through the different processes in a relationship over time. We looked at some of those turnover costs, and you can see real quick where that stuff would add up very quickly and why it would be much cheaper to, in some cases, if you're looking at vacancy loss, if it always takes you 2-3 months to rent and you're looking at the vacancy loss and you're gonna have to come out of pocket for that stuff, and you think it's gonna be a $3,000-$4,000 deal, well, maybe you knock $100 off the rent and you take $1,200 loss over the course of a year instead of $4,000, especially if your market's softening. Weigh out those numbers, evaluate them, use logic on it, and don't let it be an emotional thing. Let it be a numbers and data driven decision for you. In all cases outside of bad tenants, it's usually cheaper to keep a tenant in place. We did look at the renewal process kind of steps in there. Again, not an overly complicated process. Again, it's more about the communication, in my opinion, and talking to them and keeping up with that relationship. If you've done the other retention stuff right, you're not going to have to worry about them ghosting you on those calls. In a lot of cases, they're going to be open that communication because that's the type of relationship that you have built throughout the course of from the first time that you talk to them to the point where the renewal and the move out is coming up. And then if you need to, utilize those renewal incentives to help kind of create that urgency and finalize and securing that lease renewal. If you can keep your average tenant 3-4 years, over the course, it's much better to have, over the course of 20 years, have 5 residents than it is to have 20 residents, because you're just going to increase your chances of evictions and damage and all that stuff. So again, the retention's huge. Just think about that. 5 residents over 20 years, 20 residents over 20 years. All the vacancy loss, the damage, the turnover, all the changes, the costs there would just be astronomical. The benefits far outweigh all the effort and the cost of keeping somebody in place. So just kind of keep that in mind there. Okay, so let's take a quick look. Again, not a lot of resources, at least that we went over. The resources here is really just kind of a couple of the different versions I posted up here in terms of the different renewals, non-renewal notices. In the Forms Vault, there's all kinds of different ones. There are just different wordings, different verbiage, different things like that. Go in there, see what you like, see what sets well with you, see what kind of verbiage you like, pull the ones you like, change it the way you want to, and then utilize it. Again, the notifications, the outside the notice of non-renewal, the lease renewal stuff is not important anyway, outside of it just being in writing. What's important is the communication and that you have with that person, get them on the phone, having a visit, having that conversation. That is what is key in terms of renewal and the retention, and again, building on a relationship that you have hopefully already taken care of as well. All of that is what's going to make you successful in your retention efforts. So, and again, like I said, and there are a lot of alternative versions for all this. So that is what we have. One session for the retention. That's what we have for this section of the Landlord Launch course. Make sure to visit us on our weekly Q&A. If you have any questions, I say it almost every time. Even if you don't have any questions, come join us, because you never know what kind of questions you will hear, what kind of information and what you will learn from other people. Very, very beneficial. And so we are moving into, we're about wrapped up. We're going to be moving into the move out process, and we're going to be moving in kind of like the turnover management. And then that's going to really wrap us up for the Landlord Launch program. Kind of as we go, I am going to touch on some bookkeeping stuff here and there. But in terms of the core of the program, we're kind of coming to the end of the property management life cycle, which is great. There's been a ton of information. I hope you guys are, taking all kinds of notes and, really putting this stuff into place and taking action and improving your processes as well. So we will wrap it up. Thank you once again for hanging out with us and getting through this. We are almost done. I look forward to seeing you in the next section. So I will see you then with the move out process.